There are a growing number of adult people who think that it's just a sexual preference to want to have sex with your children. This is a fight in America that needs to be fought. We're going to be talking about that today on Our Watch. I want to welcome you to Our Watch. I am Tim Thompson, and we want to thank you for joining us today and ask that you would go over to ourwatch.com, subscribe, become one of our watchmen, because you got to get the truth into your life. And as you know, all over social media, they're trying to censor us, especially when we talk about men who want to have sex with children. So it's very important to make sure that we get the right information. To talk about this information today, we got a very special guest with us. We've got Allie Marie. She's the Director of Civic Engagement for Moms for America. Allie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Pastor, for having me. I'm excited to be here to speak with your followers and your listeners.
Yeah, tell me if you would. So Moms for America, you're the Director of Civic Engagement. What does that look like? What's your job there? What do you do?
So what I do with Moms for America is, well, first of all, Moms for America has been founded in 2004. We actually turned 20 years old this year, which is really pretty exciting. We are an educational corporation, which is rooted on the principles of liberty and virtues that our nation was founded on. And we try to educate mothers and community members on what those actually look like and how to act that out in their communities by teaching their children so that their children can act that out in their communities when they're around their peers, and for parents and adults to act that out in their communities as well around their families and their friends and their neighborhoods. But as far as my title and what I do with Moms for America is I simply teach people how to build those relationships with those that are elected and that are supposed to represent our values and our principles that are founding our nation. And that's what I do. So I do that across the nation. It's so much fun. And
you're an Army veteran as well, right?
Yes, sir. I am. I was in the Army, and my job title was I was CBRN, so chemical, radiological, biological, nuclear, all that stuff.
Well, thank you so much for your service to our country. We really appreciate it. Your fight didn't end when you got out of the military. You're still fighting for the values that we have here. We were talking about pedophilia. I'm not going to call it minor attracted persons like they want us to do and soften the title. We're talking about pedophiles, men and women as well that seek to gratify themselves sexually by preying on our children. And this is becoming an epidemic in the United States, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, as someone that is a survivor of rape, I believe that this is something that we have been desensitized to, right? I think that this is something that is very disgusting, and it shouldn't be happening. They are desensitizing our children by making them used to listening to and seeing and hearing a lot of these trigger words that would be essentially red flags. They're teaching our children to not trust their innate ability to that warning signal that says, hey, something's wrong here, right? And to have parents that their main job, right, is to protect their children, completely ignore these red flags is very dangerous.
Yeah. I call this the proverbial ostrich with their head in the sand.
Absolutely.
At this point, it's so easy to find out what the reality of what's happening on our government-ran schools. For a parent to say these things aren't happening, and that is essentially what I've had for years now. I've been in this fight for over a decade now, and for many years, parents were telling me this stuff just isn't happening, and a lot of bad things happened during COVID, no doubt, but I was so grateful for COVID because it forced parents to actually see what was being taught to their kids. And they started to realize, that crazy pastor from California isn't so crazy after all.
Right. It's cognitive dissonance is what it is. It's willful ignorance.
Yes.
For parents that say, or people that say that this is not going on in our schools, all they simply have to do is to look at their library that's in the schools. We have hundreds of sexually explicit material that is available to our students that is provided by our government. So this is government-sanctioned pedophilia. This is government-sanctioned sexual harassment on our most vulnerable citizens in this country, which is our children. And parents need to take a stand and step up and say, absolutely not. And we also need to make sure that our churches are actually standing up and saying, absolutely not, because we cannot pervert the next generation. You educate the child, and so goes the soul of the nation. clearly we can see where that is going. It's headed towards massive pedophilia. It's headed towards massive sexual deprivation, which is something that cannot stand on its own. And society crumbles when all of that happens. If you take a look at history, and that's a problem. We need more people to really find their intestinal fortitude to stand up and say no.
Yeah, I've been watching what's happening, and I'm so grateful for organizations like Moms for America. There's a lot of mama bears who have gotten engaged, but where are the men? Where are the men in this?
That is a great question.
Yeah. I just, for the life of me, I don't understand. I thankfully, I homeschooled my kids, and my kids are grown, and I've got grandkids now. But I can't imagine a male presenting himself as a female trying to tell my daughter that he can breastfeed a child, and try to tell my daughter that would be normal. I mean, I would never put up with that.
Well, what is really interesting about this is that I feel like America has been under attack for quite some time. They first started with the feminist movement, right, to make women feel like they can do everything a man can do, which is not possible. Women cannot do everything that men can do. We have specific roles. We're built different. Men work a lot harder than women do physically with their hands and things of that nature. And so with this feminine movement, they ended up demasculating men across time. And so that's why we see a lot of men that are a little bit more feeble, and they're a little more meek, right? And they won't step up and stand on principle. And the ones that do are considered white supremacists, right? Regardless of your color. So when I ran for school board, I was called that as well. So it's really interesting how the media is able to portray certain people that don't align with what their narrative that is being pushed. And as far as the whole male breastfeeding situation, what's really interesting about that is that even when you have women that want to breastfeed and can't for whatever reason, there are zero medical interventions for that. But now, because we have men that pretend to be women through a psychological delusion, now all of a sudden there's medical interventions for breastfeeding. What? What are they really trying to do here? They're trying to push pedophilia. They're trying to make it okay. And they're also trying to wipe away the traditional role of women, the natural role of women.
Right. And it's happening at the lowest levels now. We're indoctrinating children at very early ages into this type of ideology. And it's so important that, you said you ran for school board. It's so important to put the right people on the school boards. Here in Southern California, what we did at Our Watch just this last election cycle was we worked with local people who wanted to run for school board. We put them on our program. We got their names out there. And eventually what ended up happening right here in the city of Temecula, where I'm at, is we ended up flipping that school board. We took over the majority. We put 3 Christian people on there, Christian conservatives that were ready to put up the fight that needed to be put up. Day one, they banned critical race theory. They ended up firing the legal counsel of the school district, hired conservative counsel for the school district, fired the superintendent, hired a Christian superintendent. They banned all flags except for the United States flag and the California flag. They put in a policy that required parental notification if a child came to school and wanted to transgender at school. Yep. They banned pornography, erotica, pervasive materials in the schools, banned it. I mean, they did all of this within the first year, and that's what we have to do on a national scale. What's going on in your neck of the woods with school boards?
No, absolutely. I read that story about in your area with the school board completely flipped. That is amazing. It's absolutely amazing what you can do when you have good principled people that are in government that are able to push a student-focused and academic-focused, a back-to-basics kind of agenda to make sure that our children are protected and that they are getting a quality education. Quality education is learning the core curriculum, right? It doesn't mean learning about all of these other things that parents are required to teach, and you're usurping parental involvement and parental values and their influence into the schools. And that's not how that's supposed to work. When I ran for school board, I ran in 22. I was one of the first school board candidates to ever be endorsed by a sitting governor in the history of politics in the United States. I ran for a countywide seat in our county, in Hillsborough County, Tampa, Florida. We have about close to 2 million people here, and about 20% of the voter populace came out to vote, and I earned 80,000 votes. And while I didn't win my vote, I did win every single in-person voting that day, but I lost because of mail-in ballots. So we'll see what, you know what I'm saying? Like that. Yeah, it's a little, you know,
right.
But I was one of those people that was able to push and that wanted to push. That was a part of my platform, pushing common sense, right? Getting rid of all of the smut, getting rid of all of the things that, you know, don't have our children set up for life after school. And I was called white supremacist and blackface. I was called an Uncle Tom. I was called a race traitor. I was called a bootlicker. I was called all of these horrible names, all because I stood on principle and values to make sure that our children were protected and well educated. I think that is something that has completely exploded since 2020 with parents that are getting their feet wet into the political realm, and they're trying to, you know, go onto their school boards and into their city councils and into the legislature to make sure that our children are being taken care of. We do have some candidates that are running here in Tampa that want to do the same thing, and I'm behind them 100% because we need it. We need more parents and more principled people to run for school board. Education, while the school board is not a sexy race, it is the most important race of all political races, because that is the next generation of America, right? You have to educate the next generation of America. And if you don't educate them in the principles that founded this nation, and you don't educate them in the values that keep them to sustain that, then we're going to get a communist country. We're going to get a country of children that hate our country, that hate each other, that are ideological and have no values or principles. Right. And we can't have that as an American country.
No, we can't. And yeah, I've been saying this. It's the issue of parental rights that's going to win elections, no matter what election it is. And we know this even here in the state of California, which is very obviously we're very liberal here in California. I'm not obviously, but the state in general is known as very liberal, very left leaning. Even though that is the case, 80% of voters in California are on the side of parental rights. 80%. Right. So it's not a question of party line. This is something that parents understand that, listen, I'm the parent. I'm the one that gets to say what happens in my kid's life, not you. So it's the issue that is going to win. I got one more question I want to ask you, and then I want to ask you how people can connect with you. But I want to talk to you because you are an Army veteran, and you look at the DEI stuff, the diversity, the equity, the inclusivity stuff that's creeping into at this point, it's not even creeping into our military. It is forced on our military. Yeah. As a veteran of the Army, how do you feel about this DEI garbage?
Well, it takes away from the mission. What's the mission, right? What are we mission focused, or are we worried about other things? It takes away from being combat ready. And that is the mission of the military, is to be combat ready. When you're worried about the skin color or the gender or the sex of somebody that's standing next to you, you're not really going to be worried about who's going to fire the right way. Right? Can you fire your weapon? Do you have my back? Those are the things that you need to learn and understand when you're in battle, right? And to have DEI in all of these different aspects of not just military, but in our schools and in our corporate world and in government, it's mind blowing, because it's pushing an ideology that is not successful. And it hasn't ever been successful. It's a color revolution. And that's how they're able to take over countries. And it's pointless, and it needs to go away. Yeah,
I couldn't agree with you more. How can people connect with you? How can they support what you guys are doing?
Absolutely. So we're actually doing a 3-day conference in Dallas. You can go to mfa20.com to find tickets and learn more about that. You can also visit momsforamerica.us, fill out any of our surveys. If you want to connect more with me, myself, you can follow me at, I'm at Real Allie Legg on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. You can also email me at allie@momsforamerica.net, and I'll be there to answer any of your questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Allie Marie. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate all that you're doing. And I also want to thank everybody for tuning in. Once again, if you would, like this video, share this out with your friends, your family, your neighbors. Go over to rwatch.com, subscribe, become one of our watchmen. Love to have you as a part of our team. Whole lot coming up in the future, so stay tuned right here. See you next time on Our Watch with Tim Thompson.